In this video, you're going to learn about Zapier, which is a web-based application that allows you to connect various apps to one another. So for example, here we are on the App Explorer homepage. You can see that Zapier automatically recommends various quote-unquote zaps, and a zap is just their term for a connection between two applications. So for example, over here you can see that it says create a Trello card from a new Google Sheet spreadsheet row, or save new Eventbrite attendees to a Google spreadsheet. So basically the way that it works is anytime an action happens within the source application, and the source application can be anything, Trello, Gmail, Mailchimp, whatever, Infusionsoft, anytime that action occurs, it triggers another action to happen in the destination application. And I'll give you a really concrete example of how we use this in our business. So let's go ahead and head over to My Zaps. Okay. And okay, so our business is podcasting, right? Or producing podcasts. So before we brought our own transcriptionists onto our team, we needed a way to quickly transcribe new episodes that were coming in. So what we did is we created a zap between Google Drive. I'll show you this zap. It's disabled now. But the zap was between Google Drive and Rev. And what Rev is they are a transcription service that charges $1 a minute for transcription. So they have an API, which is why they're available on Zapier. And the way that it worked is that anytime I added, and actually let me go ahead and just walk you through this zap so you can see how the zap creation process works, and I'll explain how this particular zap works. So first what you do is you name your zap. Let's say automatically transcribe audio placed into a given drive folder. Now what you do is you're going to select Google Drive, and if you've never connected your Drive account, it's going to have you go through a little connection process that takes just a second. Then you select the actual trigger. So what is the trigger that causes the action you want to happen in the destination application? What is the trigger in the source application that causes the action to occur? And in this case, the trigger is going to be a new file placed in a folder. Okay, so let's continue. Then you connect your Google Drive account. Okay, we've already connected it. Then what you do is you select a specific folder. And when you click on this little drop down, it automatically loads all of the folders in your Drive account. And so let's just say, for the sake of example, we will have a folder, just a random folder. We'll say vicdorfman.com. Okay, and by the way, if you want to go deeper into a subfolder, you first select the parent folder. So in this case, it would be vicdorfman.com. Then you click on the drop down again, and it'll load all of the folders underneath that folder in the hierarchy. But in this case, let's just place it directly into the vicdorfman.com folder. So let's click continue. Okay, then it says make sure, and this is the way that Zapier sort of verifies that the trigger works correctly. It says make sure you have at least one recent file in the folder created. Make sure it matches the trigger options you picked below. So what that means is I need to go into Drive real quick, then go into my vicdorfman.com folder, create a file so that Zapier knows to look for the action that has occurred, for the trigger action that has occurred. Okay, and let's go ahead and create, let's say, a Google Doc. Okay, and we'll just call this document Zapier test. Okay, testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now we've completed the action that they asked of us, and now we're going to click fetch and continue. Okay, so the test is successful, and sometimes depending upon the source application, the destination application, this testing process can be a little bit more involved and sometimes a little bit frustrating, frankly. But once you've done a few of these apps, once you've created a few, you'll sort of get the hang of it, and it won't be such a big deal. Or, of course, you can always outsource this or have a team member own your Zap creation process. So now we'll click continue. Then we're going to select Rev as our app, and we'll say create transcription order as the action that occurs when a file is placed into the drive folder that we just specified. And we'll click continue. And obviously the actions available to you and the triggers available to you, both in the destination and source applications respectively, depend upon the application itself. So certain applications have certain actions that you can select and look for, and sometimes an application has an action, but it isn't available in Zapier because the API, which is the way that Zapier communicates with all these apps, is through what's called an API. The API may not be very well developed. Okay, and I found that, for example, with Schedule Once and with Calendly, which are two very popular calendar scheduling tools, the API doesn't seem very well developed. And actually with Schedule Once, you have to pay $10 a month if you want to make use of an API key. So again, it depends on your particular suite of apps in terms of what's possible and in terms of how much extra you might have to pay. Usually it's free. Anyway, let's continue. We've already connected my Rev account. Okay, now we'll say what it does here is it allows you to map the fields coming from the source application to the destination application. So in this case, we're setting up a transcription order anytime an audio file is placed in a given folder in my Google Drive account. So therefore, it's saying media URL of the audio or video to transcribe. Okay. And then you're going to select a file, okay, a text file or an audio file, and it's going to actually, it says file exists but not shown. Okay, so anything you place in there will be transcribed, right? Or let's say we'll scroll all the way down and we'll say if it's a document file or if it's a presentation file or a zip file, etc., etc. Okay, so let's just go ahead and say any file. Okay, length in seconds of the input audio video optional. Okay, we're going to leave this blank because we don't know ahead of time how long a given audio file is going to be. So Rev will actually determine that, and then they send you an invoice. Okay, payment type optional. Here we would say account balance. Okay, I've prepaid. Do you want your transcription to be verbatim, or do you want to remove filler words like and etc.? And I don't want it to be verbatim. I would prefer, of course, that we remove all of those stutters. Timestamps. No, I don't want timestamps. False. Client reference. A unique identifier that you can associate with this order, and we'll just say title, because what we do in our business is we name all files using certain naming conventions so that we'll already know based on the name of a file what it's for and what it is. Okay, so when the transcription is created, if they use the title, if they use the file name title for the title of the transcription, it'll already be descriptive enough to where we know we can identify what this transcription is, if that makes sense. Okay, and then we'll click continue, and then we'll click continue again, and it's going to test. Now see that here's an example of an error that you'll get. So we hit an error creating a transcription order. Bad request once said one of media inputs doesn't have external link or input URI. Okay, so let's go ahead and it says one of media inputs doesn't have external link or media URI. Okay, so in this case, what you would do is you'd go back and you'd check through all of the steps and make sure all of the fields are filled out correctly. But I'm not going to troubleshoot this particular Zap for the purpose of this video. I'd rather just demonstrate how another Zap works. Let's actually create a new Zap from scratch so that you can sort of see how the editor works and what is possible. But do know that, of course, from time to time, you're going to have to troubleshoot various Zaps to make sure that they're working correctly. And what's nice is if you're a Zapier customer, even if you're just a free customer, but even if you're a paying customer, of course, then their support is super helpful and very knowledgeable. So anytime you're stuck on a Zap and you're wondering, how can I do X, Y, and Z? Just reach out to support and detail the issue for them, and they will help you out, and they'll give you very actionable advice, I found. So let us say that I'll give you an example of a Zap that we actually use in our business and that's very useful for us. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a Zap between Trello, which is our to-do list, and I'll show you what that looks like. Here's our Trello to-do list. Okay, and you can see I have all of this stuff that I need to do. And what we often do as a team is, for example, if I assign a card to a team member, let's say I assign a card to Roland. Okay, I'll say Roland to do, new card, and I'll say test card. Please ignore. This way Roland doesn't waste time looking at it. And then I'll click on the card and I'll add a comment saying something like, Roland, please do XYZ. Ignore this. Okay? Now, as you can see, what I've done is I've at Roland David, I've used the at feature to comment directly to him. And so when you have a bunch of team members and they're all communicating on cards, what you want is you want to be able to have these communications where you specifically comment to a given individual. Now, the problem with this is once I've created this comment, if you are Roland, okay, if you log in and you're seeing the same exact board, okay, and you're a different individual than the person who made the comment, then look how invisible and how hidden the comments are. So I actually have to, first of all, I have to see the card. So here's the new card. Then I have to notice that there's this tiny little comment icon here. Then I have to actually click it, and then I have to read the comment and then respond to it. The problem is that what we found is that we usually overlook these comments because they're so easy to overlook. They're not exactly, obtrusive to the point where we can see them and quickly address them. So what we've done, and what I'm going to show you how to do now, is anytime somebody gets the at comment inside Trello, then it automatically sends that person a Slack message, a private message that they got a comment. Okay, and the reason we do this is because in Slack, all of your messages are chronological. So you can actually go through from bottom to top and address each comment. And what I like to do is I like to actually star each comment as I address it so that I know that I've addressed it. And rather than creating this Zap from scratch, because there's a little bit more involved to it, I'm going to actually see if I can't just pull it up. Okay, and I'm actually going to go into a client's account and show you how this works. Okay, so here I am in another Zapier account where this Zap is already created, and as you can see, it's disabled. And the reason that we disabled it in this case is because we were just getting too many comments in Slack. Okay, so this depends on your business and what you feel is a reasonable amount of volume of messages coming in, notifications coming in. As you play with all of these settings, you'll figure that out on your own, and you'll just simply be able to disable stuff. But in this case, we have a Trello card, then there's a filter, then there's a Slack action that happens in Slack. Okay, so let's actually open this Zap. and take a look at how it works. Now the first thing that happens is you select a board in your Trello account. So in this case, we'll say Jane Management and Admin Team. Then you'll select a list and a card. So we want to be able to create messages based on a comment in any list and for any card. So we'll say any. Continue. Okay, we've already tested the Trello account, so that works. Now, at this point, we add a filter, and the way you do this is you click this little plus button, and you can either add an action, okay, delete that, or you can add a filter. Oh, there's a filter already here. You can't have two filters back to back. Okay, so if we, for example, let's delete this one. Okay, and then we'll say, let's delete this. Yes. Yes. Okay, so we have a filter in between the two, in between the trigger and the result. And if we click on the filter, let's click on edit, you can see that this filter says, it's a rule basically. It says only run this app when the following is true. The data text contains @Jane. And the reason for that is because it's only going to send a message to Jane's private Slack messenger if the content of the card has @Jane in it. And the only time that this occurs is when somebody does an @Jane comment. Okay, so obviously in this case you'd have to know what your Trello name is. So in our case, it's @RolandDavid. So that what that would mean is that I would say change this to @RolandDavid. And so that this would only run when @RolandDavid actually showed up in the card. And if it's something else, like another person's name, then we'll create a separate Zap to go to that person's private messenger in Slack. Okay? Now let's go back and we'll say, okay, here's the filter. Test the filter. It's already been tested. We already know that it works, so we're not going to bother doing that. And then say, here's Slack. And then what action do we want to take? We want to send a direct message, okay? To whom? To Jane's Slack account, yes. And so to which user? To the username Jane. So you'd go into Slack, retrieve that person's username and send it to them. Populate that. Then what actual message text do you want to send to the person? In this case, we want to send the content of the comment, so data text, and the URL of the comment. So when somebody actually sees this in their Slack, they will get a URL and they'll be able to click on the URL, which will take them directly to the card and the comment within the card so they can read it and address it right then and there. And it says specify the name which appears as a bold username above the message inside Slack. In other words, who does it appear that this message is coming from? And we just say bot because it's not really coming from a person. So we just say bot. And then do you want to, add some emoji? Do you want to attach images, auto expand links, etc., etc., etc.? So there's a lot of different options, again, that are based on the capabilities provided by that particular app's API. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard here. You can see that there are really quite a lot of things you can do. Here's another one that we use, but it's turned off as well. It says turn starred Slack messages into to-do cards in Trello. So a lot of times what will happen in Slack is, you're working and somebody says, hey, Bob, I need you to do this, this, and this. And then 10 minutes later, they'll say, hey, Bob, by the way, I also need you to take care of this other thing. Well, there's sort of two ways you can action that. You can either take care of the business and then go back into your Slack account and say, okay, I took care of this and I took care of this. Obviously, that's prone to human error because it's easy to overlook stuff, especially when you have a whole bunch of different chats going. So what we tried for a while, and it didn't really work out so well, is we turned you can star messages in Slack. So each message has a little star, and you can click on it, and it'll create a little golden star. And anytime we start a message, it would create a Trello card for us. The problem is that stars kind of have other uses as well. And so what we found was ultimately better was just to create a Trello card anytime somebody messages you and says, hey, do this, this, and this, and you create Trello cards, and then you don't actually have to worry about the contents of your chat because all of the action items are in your Trello board and in your Trello list. So that's why this has been disabled. Let's look at some other stuff. We have reminders. We'll say, every Friday, review your team's completed Trello cards. Okay, so this is, Zapier actually has a native app called Scheduler, which it schedules stuff. So for example, if once a week you want to receive a private message in Slack that says, hey, Jane, hey Bob, whoever, review your team's completed Trello cards this week, and then archive all of the cards once you've reviewed them. Okay, so as a founder, as a project manager, you're going to want to get a snapshot of what your team did throughout the week. So that's the reason for this particular app's existence. Now, let's say it's Monday. You're just starting your week, and you're the founder, and you sort of have the best overview of which tasks are mission critical and which are the most important things you need to do that week, for both for you and your team members. And what you'll do is in this case, you'll schedule a private message to come into your Slack every Monday morning that says, hey Jane, please go into Trello and go into each of your team members' to-do lists and drag the most important items to the top of that list. Okay, and what this has the effect of doing is that you and your team members, so this includes you and your list, this has the effect of making sure that you and your team are working on the most important things first. Okay, and you could see how that would be an important thing. Okay, let's look at some other examples. Okay, let's say so Leanne is a team member, and we have a Zap for her that says every Monday, archive completed Trello cards from last week. So this is a reminder that tells each team member that, look, you've the founder or the project manager has already looked at all of your completed cards on Friday. So what that means is now it's Monday, you can clear all of the cards from your completed list. You can see I have a completed list here. It's Friday. So what that means is I can click on archive all cards in this list. Easy. Okay, what else do we got here? Let's look in the home page. So we have some disabled Zaps here that are no longer in use, but just for the sake of example, we'll just take a quick look at them. We'll say automatically upload mentoring calls to Wistia from Dropbox. So this is similar to the Drive example we looked at earlier. If a file is placed in a particular folder in Dropbox, what this Zap does, what it's supposed to do anyway, is automatically take that file and upload it into your Wistia account. Unfortunately, we found that this app actually doesn't work too well because the files are too large and the upload always times out. So this particular Zap, while it would be great, actually doesn't work too well in practice. Okay, let's look at something else. Create Mailchimp subscribers from Typeform entries. Okay, so if somebody fills out your Typeform form, and you want to add them to a list inside Mailchimp, you can simply do this with a Zapier Zap. Super easy. Okay, let's look at a few others. Okay, if somebody tried to pay for a product and their PayPal charge failed, this Zap sends a notification to the founder or whoever is responsible for accounting and stuff like that. It sends them a notification inside Slack that says, hey, we had this charge that didn't go through, look into it, or follow up with that customer, said, hey, I see you try to purchase XYZ, but it didn't work out. Let me help you facilitate this purchase. I'll take your credit card now. And you call the customer and save the sale, basically, right? You don't want to lose that sale. They already tried to pay, but they weren't successful for whatever reason. So get in touch with them and save that sale. And you can see that you can connect several apps in a row. You can connect with Infusionsoft, PayPal, put them through a bunch of filters. And I've given you a really kind of basic overview of Zapier functionality. But the truth is that now Zapier has something called multi-step zaps, where you can literally string together a whole bunch of zaps and have them perform various actions based on the data each application has collected in the previous zap. Okay, and as you become more familiar with Zapier and as you spend more time playing with it and setting up zaps, you're going to find, I think, as we've found, that you can really automate quite a lot of things that didn't seem automatable initially. Okay, things like, a process for refunds or a process for saving the sale, or all of these kinds of things that usually require manual intervention on the part of you or your team, and may still require manual intervention, but at least the preliminary steps will be automated. And by preliminary steps, I mean like the example we just looked at, where if you have a failed charge, somebody tried to buy a product, then instead of your team having to actually look through PayPal or receive an email from PayPal saying, hey, this charge didn't go through, and then looking up that customer or prospect in your CRM, all of that stuff automatically happens and just sends you a message in Slack saying, hey, this guy tried to pay, it didn't work out, call him, save the sale. So that is an overview of Slack. If you have any questions or comments or feel like I could explain something better, just let me know and I'll be happy to help. Okay, talk soon.